record last hour. Okay, perfect. So go backwards. We got to do 6 and 7. I told you earlier that you already learned everything that's on the quiz. So is this on the quiz?
No.
No. However, we are going to use skills that will be on the quiz doing this. I was telling my last class that sometimes I like to stretch our brains in notes so that when we get to homework and tests, it feels easier because we did something harder already. So that's what this is going to feel like. You might be like, are we going to have to do this on our own? No. But the things that we're going to talk about will be applicable later. So we're actually going to start on 6B because I think it's easier. And this is where I need us to start kind of doing the smart, not necessarily like hard or long way of doing things. So this direction says find the area and perimeter of the figure formed by the points. If I'm given points, I'm always going to draw them out. I'm going to see what's given to me. What can I do? Minimal effort by just plotting some points on a graph. So go ahead, plot these points. And it doesn't have to be exact, but it's going to be good enough. -2, 1 is A. -2, 6 is B. 4, 6 is C. And then 4, 1 is D. Okay. All right, I've got a nice little rectangle, quadrilateral, square, whatever you want to call it, shown. And I need to find area and perimeter. So that means that I need to find the side lengths. Now, we learned distance yesterday. Do I need to do distance here, or is there an easier thing I can do? I can just count. I can just pop, pop, pop. I'm going to count all my little spaces, okay? So if I start here, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units up, I believe. You can also double check to go from 1 to 6, we had to go up 5. And then if I'm going left to right, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which again makes sense if I'm going from -2 to 4. Okay, so I know what all my sides were. I could have done distance formula, but that's honestly hard work, and I could just count and get the exact same answer, so I'm not doing that. Knowing those sides, can you tell me what my perimeter would be, or what I do to find my perimeter? Add them all up. 5 plus 6 plus 5 plus 6. And we get 22 units. Similar with area, what's the area of this rectangle or square? How would I find that? 5 times 6, length times width, and that is going to be 30 units cubed. Or squared, sorry, I don't know why I said cubed. Okay, perfect. We did the easier one first. We're going to go back and do 6A, which is a triangle, and we are going to have to do distance formula. For sake, though, of our time, we should know how to do the distance formula, so I'm going to make you just do one distance, and then we'll kind of share the burden so not anybody's doing all 3 distances. Okay? If you don't have to, though, don't do it. Let's work smarter, not harder. When I jump over to 6A, just like I started the other one, let's draw a picture. Let's kind of visualize what's going on. Plot your points. Well, I guess that's as good of a triangle I'm going to get today. All right, so I've got this triangle, and if you notice, there's no like straight horizontal or straight vertical side, so I do not get to just count this time. I'm going to do distance formula. If I had to do this by myself, if I was sitting here and I didn't have all of you guys here to help me, I'd have to find distance for AB and for BC and for AC. But instead, we're going to share the weight. Maybe we'll do boys, can you find distance for AB? And then girls, can you find distance for BC? And then I will do AC. Okay, ready, set, go. Honestly, as long as you do one of them, it doesn't really matter which one you do. I just want to make sure all of them are done. So pick one segment, make sure you do it. I've got AC on the board. Anyone get AB yet? Yeah, Nikki.
31 square root.
I got 41. I got 82 for AC. You got 41, okay. For AB, I got square root of 41. What about BC? Did anyone do BC? I also got square root 41 for BC. Did you guys?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so AB is 41, BC is 41, and then AC is 82, all under the square root. Okay, before we do anything else, we can just stop and we can do our perimeter. Perimeter is where we add them all up. So I'll do root 41 plus root 41 plus root 82. Can I add all three of those together to give me just one number? What can I add together? The 41s, very good. And what is root 41 plus root 41?
2.
2 root 41, good, okay. We have some memory from our radical word. Good, I love to see that. And that's as good. It's an ugly answer, but it's as pretty as it can get. 2 root 41 plus root 82. That is correct. Now area. We actually have all the things we need for area. And this is something that I think is kind of cool and interesting. You may not think is cool and interesting, just kind of humor me. If I label my picture, I've got root 41, and then root 82. This is an isosceles triangle. What does isosceles mean again? You might remember that from geometry. Two of the sides are the same. Good. So these two sides are the same. It is also a right triangle. Ooh, do you know how I know that? Those two sides are the same. And then when I go from root 41 to root 82, I would have to multiply by root 2. Do you remember our special right triangles? 45, 45, 90, where we multiplied by the leg by root 2 to get to the hypotenuse. So this is a special right triangle. And the only reason this is cool and helpful is because I have a base and I have a leg. 1/2 base times, or height. I have base and height, so I couldn't remember what this was.
It's like a funky one to do that. You know what I'm talking about? Isn't there like a 40 square?
Yeah, you remember the 60, 30, 90s?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now I hope this doesn't cause any trauma, but we are going to be doing that a lot in second semester. So I'm going to have to remind you about those in second semester, about our special right triangles. That's all trig.
Could use lower.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that you haven't thought about it since we learned about it as sophomores, so we'll review it then. But that being said, the only reason that's interesting, the only reason I bring it up is that I can do area because area is 1/2 base times height. And because it's a right triangle, I have a base and I have a height. So the two sides that are around the right angle are my base and height. So I'm just going to do 1/2 times root 41 times root 41. And 1/2 times root 41 times root 41 is just 41 over 2. If you want to make that a decimal, go for it. I just don't have my calculator out, so I'm not going to. If it wasn't a special right triangle like this and I didn't have base and height, we would have to do more work to find the area. So it was just kind of lucky that we only had to do those 3 distances and then we could move on. Again, all we're doing is stuff that we've done before. You guys have known perimeter and area for a long, long time. We just learned distance yesterday. So these problems aren't hard. It's just application. That's the hardest part. Okay. Same idea for number 7. You're going to have to tell me what did we learn yesterday that's going to be applicable here on number 7.
This point.
Oh, yeah. Ahead of the game, even Avery. Prove that the diagonals of the figure formed by the points bisect each other. Ooh, again, geometry throwback. What does bisect mean? Cross in a special way.
Perpendicular.
It could be perpendicular. It doesn't have to be. Michael, you got something? At the midpoint. And if it crosses at the midpoint, it cuts it in half. Good. Bisect means cuts in half. And so what we're going to do is see if these points, the diagonals, have the same midpoint, okay? Let's draw a picture like we have been doing. I'm going to draw a picture so that I can prove it. It's even more fun because it's gonna be a parallelogram. Now it is a very skinny parallelogram, but we want the diagonals to cross. And can you tell me which 2 points do I connect to make a diagonal? AC and BD, good. And so if the diagonals bisect each other, again, throw back to geometry, it doesn't look like my diagram is correct, but that means that these 2 segments are going to be congruent, and it means that these 2 segments are going to be congruent. So that means that we want the diagonals to have this, to have the same midpoint. And so just like we did last time, let's kind of divide and conquer, pick one set of the diagonals, and we're going to find the midpoint between them. So one of you can do AC, one of you can do BD, maybe do one the same as your neighbor so you can check and compare, and then I'll put both of them on the board. You guys get the same thing I got? For both AC and for BD, I got 2, 2. Feeling good? Cool. So again, these are skills. You're gonna have to do distance and midpoint on the quiz, but I'm not gonna make us do shapes. I'm not gonna say find the same midpoint. I'm not gonna use the word bisect, but I just wanted to kind of re-practice and finish those skills off, okay? We're gonna jump into P3 now. And my other class liked that a little bit more than P2. So if P2 is not really your jam, P3 is a little bit more equations. You may just kind of feel this is a little bit more at home. And we should hopefully finish it or get close to finishing it if we have time today. Okay. Let's go to P3 number 1. It says, is -1 a solution of this equation? How do I decide if it is or is not? Plug it in. So I'm going to plug -1 in for all my x's. Remind me if I haven't done fractions in a while, what do I need to do in order to add those fractions together? Common denominator, need some like denominators. I'm going to multiply by 3 on the first one and by 2 on the second one. That way I have all 6's as my denominator, so I'm able to compare at the end. All right, what you guys think? Is that what you guys got? Perfect. Is that yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes. They equal each other. All right, cool. Let's keep rolling. Next, I'm talking about linear equations. What do we know about linear equations? What shape does that make? A line. And what's the equation of a line? Y equals mx plus b is what I'm looking for. It could be x equals a number as a vertical line, y equals a number as a horizontal line, but in general, if we say line, most of us kind of spit out y equals mx plus b. So I want something that looks like that general equation. If we cannot make it look like that, it is not a linear equation. So letter A, is there a way, I know none of these have y's, so just ignore the fact that none of them have y's. Could we make that into mx plus b? That first one, letter A. Sure. You can move everything to one side, you would get mx plus b. What about letter B? I don't think so. What's the problem there? The x's are going to go away and that's going to be an issue. What about letter C? What is that?
It's a.
A radical? A square root? That would be a radical equation, which we'll deal with radicals, not right now. That's not linear, so that doesn't count. What about 8 equals 16 over 2? No, it's a true statement. It's just not linear. What about letter E? Ooh, I've got a square. And what's a square? What do we call an equation with a square in it? Quadratic. It's that U shape. So I'm going to call that one a no too. And then what about letter F? Ooh, I got a problem with letter F.
Let's say.
The fraction. And that's what we call a rational function. And if you were to try and get rid of that, we'd end up getting an x squared there. So either way, we don't like that. You know.
Oh, when I did C, I solved it out and I got x equals 16 over 5 squared. If I squared that, it would be an x equals problem. No? So it would-
Well, you're solving for x.
Yeah.
I want x like with pieces because that's like how this is right here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call that not linear. You could solve it, it's just not linear.
Yeah.
And will we do quadratics and radicals and rationals? Absolutely. But right now today we're doing very basic linear. So you guys are capable of doing more of that. We're going to go back to the basics, which hopefully means for a pretty easy day today. And actually, if you look at letter 3 or number 3, there are 5 problems here that I bet you could maybe even do without any of my guidance. I'm going to touch base with you when we get to letter D, but I bet you can do it either by yourself or with a neighbor, A and B and C, without any help in remembering, and you'll just kind of breeze right through it. I'm going to silently do mine. I'll put my answers on the board so you can check in whenever you're at like a stopping point. Okay, I've got A, B, and C answers all on the board. So take a second, check your work. If you're still working on them, that's all right, keep working through. But pause before you get to D. Pause before you get to D. Okay. One thing I want to bring our attention to on B, I multiplied by 3/2. What's the vocab word we'd use for 3/2 compared to 2/3? Reciprocal, so multiply by that reciprocal in order to get rid of it. And then I did some distributing down here. We should know what that is. Any questions on 3A, B, or C? That's pretty easy, right? You're killing. Let's go to letter D. I wanted to talk here, and you probably were like, Miss White, I can do this without you. Great, help me out though. What do I need to do here? Multiply that 4. I want to get rid of that denominator. We call that clearing my denominator. So I'm going to multiply by 4 to everything. When I multiply by 4 to that first term, do I do 4 times 2 and 4 times 3? No, why not? Cancels at the bottom. So I just have 2x minus 3. I do have to do 4 times 5. And I do have to go across the equal sign and do 4 times 3x. That's one of the biggest things we forget is you got to go across the equal sign. Then I'm going to combine my like terms like we have been doing. Move everything to one side. And then get x alone. I think letter E, you also have to do that. What am I going to multiply by everything in E to get rid of the 3 and the 4 and the 2? 12. Now, I lean to always multiply by 12. Your other teachers in the past, Ms. Hollis, Ms. Luddington, they may have said get like denominators and then you cross off your denominator. Someone was asking about that this morning. You can multiply like by 4 on both parts up here. You can multiply by 3 on both parts on that, and by 6 over here. Did Ms. Hollis do that a lot? I think Ms. Hollis likes to do the denominators and then she just crosses it off, right? That is totally fine. You can definitely do it that way. I like to think instead about clearing the denominators, and I'm just going to multiply the whole thing by 12 and just clear and cancel like we did on that 4 over here. So when I multiply by the first fraction, that's going to cancel and be 4. So I like to write 4 times t minus 1. When I do to the second fraction, I cancels and I get 3. So I'm going to do 3 times t plus 5. And then when I do the last one, I'm going to cancel and it's going to be 6. So 6 times 1. Now, is it a tiny bit excessive that I write it out like this? Perhaps. Am I going to ensure that I don't lose anything or mess anything up? Absolutely as well. So if you're okay and you don't need to show me that step and you can do your distributing to the t and the -1, go for it. I'm proud of you. But if you start making mistakes, I'm going to say, show me more work, okay? 4t minus 4, 3t plus 15 equals 6. There's my letter E so far. Doing okay? All right, let's keep moving. What about that next set, those inequalities? Do you think you can do those? Are they any different than what we were just doing? Not much, right? The only thing is switch your inequality if you divide by a negative. I'm going to show my work, and if you feel good, I want you to just keep chugging and check in. And if you have no idea what you're doing, look up at me. But this might be a nice little easy, just kind of moving through today. Ooh, and then one piece I want to challenge you on. I also want you to draw this on a number line And I want you to write it in interval notation. Those are things I'm gonna ask you on the quiz tomorrow, so let's just kind of keep practicing them. Going from interval to inequality and vice versa and graphing. So once I have my answer, I'm gonna say, okay, good job, now I'm gonna graph it. And I'm gonna write it in interval notation. Are you guys good with letter B where it's like that step in the middle and then you have to do it to all of the sides? Do you remember doing that back in algebra 2? Here, I'll do it with you if you don't remember. I know I've got two different inequality signs, that's okay. Whatever I'm doing to the middle to get that x by itself, you have to do to both the far left and the far right. Again, what I do in the middle, I have to do to the far left and the far right. Remind me for my interval notation on letter B. With the 1/3, is it gonna be a parentheses or a bracket? And then what about for 3? Good. You guys are rocking that interval notation, good job. Right, as you jump to the back, we may want to do a little reconvene before we get to C and D. This is the same idea. If again, you want to get like denominators, if you want to get like denominators, feel free to do that. You also can cross cancel out your denominators by doing what I was doing before. What would I multiply by everything here? Or what would your like denominator be? 6. Good, I'm going to multiply by 6. And then we'll definitely talk about D in 1 second. So if you're ahead of me, just kind of chill for a sec. Now we flip the paper, but make sure you're also graphing it and doing interval notation. Everybody good on letter C? Okay, if I'm moving too slowly ever, just let me know. I'm just trying not to move too fast. Let's jump to letter D. You can do a couple things on this. I am gonna want to cancel, but I don't want to do it right now because honestly, the parentheses are a little confusing to me. Would you guys agree? If I'm not really sure, let's get rid of the confusion by getting rid of those parentheses. Let's start by just distributing everything. We'll kind of deal with the fractions momentarily and then we'll get rid of them in a second, okay? So as I distribute, I get 1/2 x plus 3/2 plus 2x minus 8 is greater than 1/3 x minus 1. And if you're okay with fractions, you keep working with this. I don't care. That's fine with me. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to multiply by what to get rid of my fractions? 6. Very good. And I have to multiply 6 to every single thing, not just the ones with fractions, to every single thing and on both sides of the equal sign or inequality sign. So 6 times 1/2 is going to be 3x. 6 times 3/2 is going to be 9. 6 times 2x is 12x. And 6 times -8 is -48. 6 times 1/3 is 2x. And then 6 times -1 is -6. Now I gotta start combining all my terms. I gotta get my x's together. I gotta get my constants together. And then I'll move them to opposite sides of the equal sign. 15x minus 39. Then I'll move my x's to the left and my constants to the right. Everybody hanging with me so far? Okay. I'm going to draw my number line. And I'm going to do my interval notation. I know I stopped asking interval notation. Are we feeling okay with interval notation? Okay, good. That was pretty fun, right? That was pretty easy. Good. Got just a couple more things that we're going to do, and then we're going to call it a day for today. I've got one more that's like the solution that we did earlier is to a solution of this inequality. How do I figure that out again? Plug it in. I get 8 is less than 8. Not true. What if it said 8 is less than or equal to 8? That's cool. That's cool. But 8 is not less than 8, so that does not count. That is not part of my solution. Right. Now, my last 4 problems, these are problems that for some reason we struggle with. And I think in your hearts, you know how to do it. It's just we get kind of lost and it gets a little ugly. And I think we get uncomfortable with that. Okay. I did not tell us what to solve for here, so I'll just decide as we go. So like for this first one, we'll solve for W, okay? That means I want W alone. You gotta move everything else away from W. I gotta keep W by itself. So somebody, what's one of the first things I can do to keep W by itself? What should I do first?
5/2.
I can divide by 2. You could distribute that 2 in as well and then move it later, or you could just divide it off right here. Either way is fine. P/2 equals L plus W. What else do I need to do to get that W alone? Minus that L. This is where it gets a little uncomfy. The minus L is separate from that P/2, so make sure that they're next to each other. They're not all on top, they're not all on bottom. P/2 is minus L is equal to W. The end. You guys good? You're doing really good today. I know it's been a long day. Keep it up. All right, let's do the one underneath it just because it's right there. And let's solve for R here. What's one thing I can do to start getting R by itself? Say one more time. Multiply by 3. We can do that. So I get 3v equals 4 pi r to the 3rd. That's cool. What do I do next to start getting that R all by itself? We can divide by 4 pi. If you wanted to multiply by the reciprocal in that first step, if you wanted to multiply by 3 over 4 instead of just multiplying by 3, you're totally welcome to do it. Just note that 3 and v are both going to be on top eventually, and then 4 and pi are going to be on the bottom of the fraction eventually. And then my last step to get that r by itself. Cube root, square root with a 3, radical 3, whatever you want to call it. Cube root that off, so I'm going to get r is equal to the cube root. Ooh, that's messy. Of 3v over 4 pi. Awesome. Let me give you directions for the last two. You try those on your own and I'll put my answers up. Let's say for letter B, find or solve for B sub 1. And then for letter D, let's solve for F. There are our last two problems today, and then we are done. You guys are doing so good. Got the answer on the board when you're ready. There's B and D on the board if you need both of those. Good work today, guys. How are we feeling? Pretty good? Hey, is anything that we just did today on your quiz? No. So your job, I actually don't see you guys until Friday. I am not assigning P3. I don't need it in my hand until Monday, I think is when I see you again. Don't feel like you have to do it for Friday in case it's going to mess you up. If you're like, I'm on a roll, I'm going to spend my next 9 minutes, I'm going to knock this homework out, go for it. But I am not going to collect it until Monday. You have your quiz on Friday, and we're going to do a little bit of notes after it. We'll get into P4, but we won't finish it on Friday, okay? So by Monday, I need your P3 homework. And then for the next 9 minutes, you can do what you need to do.